let our viewers know that we just saw that Maduro in court said, "I am an innocent man. I'm not guilty. I'm a decent man." That's a direct quote. I want to go back to CBS News chief correspondent Matt Gutman, who's at the federal courthouse. Matt, this sounds like a dramatic moment here. We've got notes from our producer inside. Maduro taking notes, staring at his paperwork. Then this dramatic moment, he rises and addresses the courthouse. What did he say? What was the reaction?
I mean, it was very interesting and indeed a dramatic moment in court, Tony. Initially, the judge said, "Are you Nicolas Maduro?" To which he answered, "I'm the president of Venezuela. I was captured at my home." And the judge cut him off and said, "I just need to know your name." It continues with Maduro then waiving his right to the judge reading the indictment. The judge read him his rights, and Maduro said, "I didn't know these rights. Your honors inform me of them now." And then, as you said, he said, it didn't appear to actually enter a plea, and we're still trying to verify if that is the case. He said, "I am innocent. I'm not guilty. I'm a decent man. I'm still president of my country." His wife also entered a plea of not guilty, or her attorney did on her behalf. And there's still this conversation happening right now, Tony, about whether he's seen the indictment, whether he knows what's in it, and whether he has been informed of his rights. Again, this is just the initial proceeding in what could be a very long judicial proceeding with Maduro and his wife on these indictments, the first of very many. It does appear that he is entering a plea of not guilty, and this is still going on. The judge is just trying to say, hey, listen, we are here just to ensure that there is a fair trial. There will be more further on. You will have an opportunity to say your piece later on. But right now, we just need to know that you know your rights, that we know who you are, and that you enter a plea. Yeah. So this is ongoing right now, an incredibly dramatic moment in court, Tony.
Dramatic moment in court. You know, people are getting alerts on their phones. You can hear the protesters right by Matt there. And you can see for our viewers, we have a blog going on the right-hand side of your screen that shows what we know when we know it. Not guilty pleas from both Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores. I want to bring in Caroline Polisi, again, our legal correspondent here, analyst, for more on what we just witnessed. Maduro appears to have begun to speak on his own behalf in a broader way about who he was and why he thinks this is unjust, and the judge cuts him off.
Yeah, that's about as dramatic as it gets for an initial appearance and an arraignment, and I'm not surprised that Judge Hellerstein cut him off. He's not allowed to speak in open court. His attorney will speak to him. He answers yes to who he is, and he enters the plea of not guilty. Now, it's interesting that he noted something to the effect of that he didn't understand either the charges against him or his rights.
Rights, yeah.
Because that's what an arraignment is. We need to know, part of the system is that you know what's happening. And I would be surprised if his attorney hadn't gone down. I mean, that's what you do as a defense attorney. You go over in detail what is being alleged. So I would think that they would stop the proceedings to make sure that he understands, because that's a pretty big part of the puzzle here.
Can we talk about the clothes that both Maduro and his wife are wearing here, just to set the scene so people can picture it? He's in orange sneakers. They're both in identical tan kind of jumpsuits. Yeah. Feet are shackled, orange short sleeves underneath, layered underneath. And their hands are unshackled so that when they rise, they can speak freely. Is this a typical wardrobe for this kind of appearance? Why not street clothes? Why not a suit?
Yeah, so oftentimes defense attorneys will fight really hard to get their clients in street clothes or in, a suit and tie, mostly for prejudicial effects in front of a jury. Obviously, there's no jury here today. Likely, his defense attorney hasn't had enough time to sort of, liaise with the prosecution. It's also a Bureau of Prisons issue in terms of the safety and security. They make that call. It's not the prosecutors necessarily. But I would expect that the defense attorneys will make immediate motions to get them in civilian clothing for all future appearances.
Welcome back to CBS News 24/7, where we continue breaking news coverage. Right now, you are looking at a helicopter shot where we expect in moments ahead to see the armored vehicle carrying ousted Venezuelan president and widely thought to be a dictator, Nicolas Maduro. He has left the courtroom after his arraignment and now will be taken back to custody to await what is next for him. Today in court, we heard him say not guilty. That was the plea from the ousted Venezuelan leader. Also, the same echo from his wife, Celia Flores. A very dramatic arraignment playing out in that New York City courtroom last hour. They did it through a translator. This comes after a top secret U.S. military operation over the weekend caught the man widely thought once again to be a dictator. He is now out of power, and the person who was second in command is now in charge. The vice president there, at least for now, as President Trump says to the American media, we, the United States, are running things in Venezuela. So let's run over the charges right now. Maduro faces charges of narco-terrorism conspiracy and conspiracy to import cocaine and weapons. If convicted, he could spend the rest of his life in prison. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman is live outside that courthouse in New York City. Katrina, you were inside the room where Maduro stood for his arraignment. Tell us your impressions and what you saw.
So Maduro was in court with his wife, Celia Flores. He was very vocal, actually. When the judge first asked him to stand up and identify himself, Maduro launched into a speech in Spanish. The judge ultimately said he just wanted to make sure that this was, in fact, Maduro. But we did get a couple lines of what he said. He said, "I was captured at my home in Caracas, Venezuela. And that he ultimately said this was the first time he was seeing his indictment, but he wanted to read it personally on his own, not in that courtroom. They are also both not seeking to get out of detention at this time. That's something that they might revisit later. He was taking copious notes, though. Each of them had headphones on because there was a translator in their ear translating everything that was going on in that room. He looked very serious, maybe a bit frustrated at times to even be there at all, but it was a very respectful exchange between Maduro and the judge, Hallerstein, who has presided over many big matters, including some involving President Donald Trump.
And just to sort of step back, we are hearing some of the protesters outside that courtroom, like we've heard the last hour with our correspondents there. And then just a moment ago, you saw that image, that video of a freeway. That is the road that we expect Maduro will be taking as he makes his way back to behind bars. Now, we do know he has a defense strategy. We start to get a sense of what cards his defense lawyers will play. He has indeed lawyered up. What do you know about his attorneys?
So we know his attorney is Barry Pollock. He is a very experienced trial lawyer. He has just jumped on this case. One thing he did make clear in court is that they plan to challenge the legality of the arrest. That's something that we expected. If you look at case precedent here, it's very unlikely that they will win on that matter, but they are absolutely planning to raise it. They also asked the judge to waive his speedy trial right until March. That's when we're going to have another hearing at this courthouse, a check-in. They say they want to first deal with the voluminous discovery here and that there will be significant motions filed. I think another one that we will very likely see is saying that as a head of state that he should have immunity. So it will be a very complicated case, and he does now have this counsel.
All right, March 17th, the next time we will see a hearing on this. Katrina Kaufman, thank you so much. So let's go even deeper. Let's go to CBS News legal contributor Caroline Polisi. Caroline, always good to talk to you. I love your expertise. Your take on what you've read so far and what happened in the courtroom today.
Yeah, not too surprising, Reed. I think what I was looking for was whether or not Maduro was going to have lined up a retained attorney. We knew he likely, obviously, would have a court-appointed attorney if he needed to, but he does have this great criminal defense attorney, very high profile, represented Julian Assange in the WikiLeaks matter in New York, so he knows what he's doing. And just as Katrina was saying there, everything that I expected happened today, which is that his defense attorneys noted that they will be making really every anticipated argument regarding his extraction from Venezuela, that it was illegal, that it was in violation of international law, that it was in violation of national law, and that he should be granted sovereign immunity because he was the president of Venezuela. Now, as Katrina also alluded to, there is precedent for those arguments. It's very similar to the Manuel Noriega case back in 1989 when George H.W. Bush extracted him from Panama. We noted then that we saw him as a rogue dictator. We didn't believe he was a legitimate head of state. Therefore, the court said, regardless of how he got on United States soil, they would proceed with the prosecution and that he doesn't get sovereign immunity.
We can contrast what is happening with the prosecution, I think, with what happened in the days and weeks leading up with the military operation. A great deal of preparation, a great deal of planning. They knew exactly how this would go from the very beginning. On the prosecution side, where the legal side is concerned, do you feel like there has been work leading up to this that could mirror what happened in Venezuela with the military, some preparation here?
Oh, absolutely. And Marco Rubio made it abundantly clear. You know, this was a DOJ operation that was aided by the FBI and special forces because this was an extraction of two indicted individuals. Remember, Reed, this is a superseding indictment. This indictment against Maduro has been out there since 2020. So he's been under indictment for 5 years. And that's really the argument that the administration is making for why this was not an active war. The fact that there is sort of no one in charge of Venezuela now is just kind of like a byproduct of this extraction. And so that's sort of the legal hook here for why the administration feels that it did not violate the Constitution and or international law by going and getting him.
Were you struck as somebody who knows the law that there was no push for bail?
No, I thought that was a really good move on the part of the defense attorney. He's going to gain a lot of credibility with the judge because it would have been a ridiculous motion to make. You know, under the Bail Reform Act, the two factors that you have to decide are flight risk and risk to the community.
Right.
He's obviously a flight risk, Reed. So there's no chance he was going to make bail, although they did say it was without prejudice. They may put together a package in the future, but he's not making bail. He's going to be in the Metropolitan Detention Center until his trial.
All right, Caroline Polisi, fascinating always to talk to you. Thank you so much for that, watching this case so closely, as you will be, we know, for the months ahead. Former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Tom Dupree joins us live. So, Tom, a dictator plucked from another country, captured and then brought to the U.S. to face charges. A lot of questions are swirling over whether Maduro can even get a fair trial in the United States. Tony DeCopel raised this issue earlier. I thought it was a good question. There's been so much said about him for so many decades.
Yes, and look, my take is that Maduro is going to get a fair trial in the United States. Our legal system, although this is certainly an unusual case, has experience in handling these types of things. There was obviously the prosecution of Noriega from Panama many years ago. And of course, every year we have high-profile trials of people in the United States, people as to whom jurors may already come to the job with preconceived notions about the person. We've tried presidential candidates, former presidential candidates, all of that. I think the United States legal system is well equipped, and that Nicolas Maduro will be given due process and a fair trial in the United States.
So how will the legality of this case play out? And how will this happen if it's determined unlawful with what happened?
My guess is that the legality of Maduro's capture will actually not play a significant role in his prosecution. You'll recall that the same types of arguments were raised in the other example I mentioned of Manuel Noriega of Panama, where part of his legal defense, at least as he tried to present it, was that his capture was unlawful. But the United States courts basically said that's irrelevant. We are just going to focus on the charges that you're confronting and the evidence concerning those charges. We don't care about whether or not your capture was lawful or unlawful. So while I would expect Maduro's defense lawyers to try to make hay out of his capture, my best guess is that the United States judges are going to say this isn't the place for those sorts of arguments.
So let's talk about precedent. You talk about Manuel Noriega. Can that actually be cited in court to bolster the case of prosecution?
It can. Certainly lawyers and judges will often look to analogous cases as precedent that will guide, if not determine, the outcome in their particular case. And there are many similarities between the prosecution of Noriega and the way the Maduro prosecution is shaping up. And so I suspect that the Noriega trial will be like a shadow that hovers over this entire proceeding from beginning to end, with prosecutors, with defense lawyers, with judges continually drawing contrasts and comparisons between what happened in the Noriega case and what's happening in the Maduro case.
Lots of talk between now and that March 17th hearing. Tom Dupree, good to talk.